Hey, all right. Looks like I'm finally in. I got tagged in. Oh, I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready. This is
and
gonna be great.
yeah, and I'm having the sweet opportunity to do a second commentary for Jarvis and Brett. So
Very nice. Very nice.
yeah,
So, just real quick for everybody who's just joining us, my name's Anuraag Das. I'm here with Michael Bond. We're starting round two of the Legacy Premier League, and it seems like we've got Brett Jayne coming back for a second round, right? He was playing Bug Delver, I think we saw in the first round.
yeah, indeed.
Cleanly taking over the match against world champion Brian Bardu. That's some pretty exciting stuff. But
Uh,
uh, but it seems like his competition this round may or may not be the level up because we have the one, the only, the beautiful Jarvis Yu on what seems like blue black Reanimator.
yeah. So Jarvis is playing, as you're saying. Let's see here. He's playing Ellis Norn, Grave Titan, Gristlebrand, Yona, and Tide Sprouts Tyrant.
Very
So
interesting.
yeah, it is indeed blue black reanimator. And I got a fancy little sad smiley from Jarvis yesterday. His sideboard is definitely not good for his current group, but it is
Uh-oh.
a spicy deck. So the creatures I mentioned before. Okay, yeah, yeah.
Two
So
massacres.
his
Okay.
Jarvis's actual sideboard is 3 Abrupt Decay, 1 Ashen Rider, 1 Inkwell Leviathan, 1 Jace, 2 Massacres, 2 Pathling Needle, 3 Show and Chill, and 2 Thoughtseizes. So it's a bit different than what's actually displayed here. There was
Okay.
some yeah, indiscrepancies. And then again, we have Brett here with his face and his deck and his sideboard. And me and Danny talked a bit about this before. What do you think about this deck, Anuraag?
So that's a good question you're asking. I think going into game one, it's going to be very interesting. It really depends on how good Brett's initial 7 cards are and how willing he is to mulligan into some piece of interaction. I think Deathrite Shaman is going to be a critical part in this matchup. At least game one, being able to interact with Jarvis's graveyard. But the question is, will he have enough pieces to interact early enough? Because Reanimator is the turn 1, turn 2 sort of deck.
Yeah.
Little bit less consistent, as inconsistent at killing your opponent than like Sneak and Show is, where you can attack for 15 and annihilate their board and then kill them the next turn. But I still think that being able to go like a turn under is very, very, very good for Jarvis.
Yeah.
That being said, what kind of 7 cards do you think Brett's going to have in order to make it out of this game one ahead?
Deathra Shaman, Daze, Brainstorm, Force of Will, 2 lands, and a Delver.
Okay.
So just a classic tempo hand. So as we see here, he has Him to Tarth, which is not that good in the matchup. It can be really good and it can be really, really bad. That's the chance, I guess.
Right.
So, but he has a lot of the other pieces that I was talking about. He doesn't have counter spells though, so he's really hoping here for a non-aggressive start from Jarvis. And I actually forgot to talk about Deathra Shaman, because Deathra Shaman is the main deck answer to Jarvis's Reanimator strategy if he wins the die roll.
Right, for sure. And I mean, like this. Okay, so it's interesting. So both players are going to keep their 7s,
Yep.
and it looks like Brett is going to hopefully rely on just Deathrite Shaman by itself to, clinch the win here. Now, Jarvis kept a 1-land hand, which is kind of dicey. I have to imagine he's going to cast this Brainstorm before his draw step. He's going to utilize that 1 mana that he has, or he might even, go for the end step and Tomb and just hopes he draws the second land.
Yeah, I actually think that there's an interesting playing by just when he sees Deathra Shaman here. I think he has to go for Entomb, and then hope for Lotus Battle or the second land. So let's see what he does here. It's interesting what he thinks or how he thinks the game is gonna play out. I think he's gonna Entomb.
Yeah, and I definitely think this is good. I think you just given the density of spells in your hand, you want to be spending all your mana whenever you can. It's also not impossible for Jarvis to beat the single Deathrite Shaman because he's got what looks like 2 Entombs and also the copy of Exhume. So if Brett, if Jarvis does find a second land, or even brainstorm into land Reanimate, well, yeah, contingent on the second land, yeah, he might be able to just bypass the Deathrite, put 2 Gristlebrands in the yard, and then just bring one back with Exhume when Brett's only able to get rid of the other one. And this is interesting. You see what he's put in the graveyard?
It is a Grave Titan. Yeah.
Yeah, that's some business.
That is some business indeed. So let's see what he puts away here. He got Careful Study, so he could keep Gristleband in his hand to set up like a double creature in the graveyard with Tide Spirant. What is called?
There's one problem though.
Tide Spout Tyrant.
Yeah. There's one problem though, and that is Jarvis did not find his second land.
Yeah. So this is you were talking about like the consistency of the deck. There are only 15 land sources and 18 mana sources in total in the deck.
Oh, wow.
Playing three Lotus Petals and 15 lands, so 18 sources in total.
Okay, so it's not unreasonable that Jarvis would have whiffed off of the this brainstorm looking for other lands.
So now he got the card that I was talking about before, the Force of Will. Yep. So he's probably gonna keep his Ponder here so that he can play it. So he's gonna fire off Careful Study and see if he can get like the second land. So let's see. This is a really crucial turn for. He got the second land. He's gonna discard two creatures. So that he can play, as you foretold before, with the double creature Exhume. And then he's probably gonna Ponder here.
So looking at Jarvis's graveyard, he still has three very good targets in the graveyard currently. None of which I think Brett can handle very well outside of stopping Jarvis from putting them into play, or having maybe like the one Liliana if it's in Brett's deck list.
And the fun thing here is that he also got a Force of Will, so he's probably gonna keep the Brainstorm to fire off. So he's gonna eat one of the cards in the graveyard, and it's probably gonna be the Gristlebrand.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think even though Grave Titan was the first card that he's actually gonna take Grave Titan. Okay, so he thinks that he's not gonna be able to defeat Grave Titan, which seems so totally reasonable.
I think so too. I mean, Grave Titan is a ridiculously fast clock. In theory, Brett could deploy a bunch of Tarmogoyfs and maybe like block here and there a couple times, but in the likelihood is that it's not going to be good enough. Yeah. That being said, Brett also has the opportunity to exile the Gristlebrand in response to this Exhume.
Yeah.
But so it seems like we're going to have a little battle here. First, we're going to Force a Will, and geez, that is crazy. I'm not going to lie. I definitely expected Jarvis to lose when he missed his second land drop.
Yes. So did I. But that's the thing about the Reanimator deck, that it actually even though you don't draw these second or third lands, you have so much reach, and when you eventually get to the point where you can cast spells, what you do is actually like so powerful that you can easily just win the games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's interesting here that Brett. Hey, Bob.
What's up?
How's it going? It's interesting here that Brett decides to deploy the Tarmogoyf. I don't know if it's correct or not to do that. I definitely see where Brett's coming from. He needs to put a clock on fast, and he needs to kill Jarvis before this Tidespout Tyrant gets out of control. But at the same time, that Tidespout Tyrant only gets out of control if Jarvis has a lot of resources to, destroy Brett with. Yeah. So the other argument in this situation is maybe he could have cast the Hymn to Torok. Jarvis only gets to cast one spell. It gets bound, something happens, and then Brett's able to, maybe like Jarvis bricks, and then Brett just gets to deploy his threats afterwards. It's very hard to say.
Yeah. I think there is like it's 100% true what you're saying. But also, if you don't deploy any creatures on the board, then the cards that Jarvis has in his hand, that they're cards that actually serves a purpose because they're not lands and they're not Lotus Petals. So he would probably be able to like just deploy another creature. So you need to like apply a clock. So I think Brett has realized that he's in a situation where he's like, he's not favored anymore. So he needs to like try and deploy cards so that he can actually win the game. And how you win the game here is by attacking with Tarmogoyfs. So right. I think he's trying to minimize his. He's trying to optimize his outs by hoping that Jarvis is going to draw only lands from this point and the Tarmogoyf will stick.
Right, and unfortunately, it's exactly the opposite, where Jarvis is just drawing all gas, brainstorming into Lotus. He drew Lotus Petal and then brainstormed into Force, Careful Study, and Ponder. Yeah. So it seems like this Tidespout Tyrant is just going to pop off now and basically clinch the game here. I'd be very surprised if Brett's going to be able to pull this one out. I mean, mana being the huge bottleneck. That's one thing that separates the Bug Delver decks from other variants, is that the curve for the Bug Delver deck usually averages closer to about 2 mana. So here it's a little bit trickier.
But he can still, like, now he's playing the Death Shaman. And if we draw, like, only lands from this point, he drew a spell now. But if he drew, like, double land of his Careful Study and a land and then an additional land, then we would still have a game because you go down to 7 and then additional down to 2. But it's so unlikely when you play only 15 lands. We've already seen like Polluted, Misty, and 3 lands on the board. And in this spot, Lotus Petals are also just like completely devastating for Brett. So I think we're going to see like a Brainstorm, see what happens. It's not often you see a Brainstorm end of turn, but it's 100% correct here. And he's probably going to do the Upkeep Scoop as he did against BBD.
The Upkeep Scoop, classic.
Yeah, the classic.
Yeah, and I do like Jarvis dazing the Brainstorm here. It's potentially possible he won't get value out of the daze on the next turn. I mean, I think Jarvis would cast it regardless of whether he gets value or not, because Tidespout Tyrant itself is value. But this way you're just, hitting the wound like over and over and over again. Whatever, pretend I didn't say that. I think this game is over. We might be heading into a quick game 2 soon.
Yeah, but this is actually what I was talking about. Now Jarvis goes down to 2, so if he actually had, like, he can draw Liliana here. And then we're actually back into having, like, a normal game. Because did he draw Liliana? No, he didn't.
No, I think it was a Bayou.
Yeah, but because he drew, like, the 4th Underground Sea, he can't bounce the Deathrite Shaman. So if he draws a Liliana, he will 100% be back in the game and probably actually being on the winning side of the...
percentage. For sure. Okay, so let's talk about sideboarding then. Both players sideboarding. Let's go ahead and start with Jarvis, since we did visit Brett last round. How do you think Jarvis is going to board going into the game 2 here?
Well, he's definitely going to leave in his Deathrite Shamans. I think he's trying to go as full control as he can, but he has to board out the Hymn to Troths and the other discard outlets, because they're just like mulligans on his opener. So what we see here is he only has blue cards and interactive spells. And unfortunately here, he doesn't have enough cards to board out Abrupt Decays. I think I would take in the Pithing Needle to say Gristleband instead of one of the Abrupt Decays. I could be wrong though, but it just seems like if the Gristleband only attacks for 7, it's not as crucial as the diminishing returns from Abrupt Decay, because it seems like they only kill a Lotus Petal and a Pithing Needle.
Okay, I have another question. What do you feel about the Liliana of the Veil being boarded out, as well as the copy of the one Dismember in Brett's sideboard?
It seems like if you board out the Liliana, it's because you think that you're going to win the counter war. And it also seems like Jarvis is trying to board in Show and Tells to actually be able to just cast Show and Tell and take out the counter spells. So Jarvis is not relying as much on Entomb, Reanimate, this entire thing. He wants to play around Deathrite Shaman and also do a bit more like grindy game. Okay. So I think both are like setting up for a more grindy matchup and not as explosive or lopsided as we saw in the last game.
Okay, and I think that's very one. So just really quickly, we're going to look at Jarvis's sideboard. One thing he's doing that I really enjoy is deploying the second sideboarding plan of show and tells post board. So he's less reliant on the graveyard, like you mentioned, sort of bypass Deathrite Shaman and cards like Surgical Extraction that way. He also boarded in 2 copies of Pithing Needle, which is very interesting. I think there's a lot of utility in Pithing Needle being able to stop Deathrite Shaman. Potentially, if Brett stumbles on mana, he can, Jarvis can snipe a fetch. But yeah, both players are good. Oh yeah, go ahead.
But the thing is, like I said, the thing about Abrupt Decay, and it's 100% true that Jarvis has the 2 Pithing Needles in the sideboard. So, as we saw, Brett against people in the chat said that Brett was boarding weirdly. I think Brett has a 100% plan for these matchups in this group. So he knows that the best way that Jarvis can win this game is by boarding into Show and Tell, as you're saying, and Pithing Needles. And then you just need the Abrupt Decays to be able to kill. So it's counterspells, Abrupt Decay for the Pithing Needles, and then full throttle through Deathrite Shamans and Tarmogoyfs. So I really like Brett's sideboard plan here.
Okay. Yeah, I think because both players have access to deck lists, it's a lot more justifiable for Brett to keep an Abrupt Decays, because I think expect to a certain degree that the Pithing Needle and Jace Vryn's Prodigy might even come in.
Yeah.
So it's,
as we saw,
I think it's,
we actually saw that it came in.
Yeah. So both players going to start off here with a little bit of turn 1 interaction. Thoughtseize running into a Daze on Jarvis's side.
Yeah.
And it looks like
there's another Thoughtseize.
Yeah. I think this is a great start for Brett. It seems like he's got that early disruptive action that he's looking for.
Yeah, indeed. And this is again. It seems like it's where Brett wants to be. This entire tempo, just firing off Daze. No, it was Jarvis who fired off Daze. Just trying to discard his hand, wasteland his cards, and just deploy the 1 threat and just try to squeeze out the game really really fast. Even though he boarded into this control this plan, it's still very similar to the old Canadian threshold with the stifle effects. So I'm actually kind of so he's playing Ponder here instead of the Tarmogoyf. So it seems like he wants to get the Deathrite Shaman before things spiral off hand.
Okay. It seems like there's a Force of Will and a Ponder and a Bayou.
Yeah.
That we're seeing here.
And we know that Brett knows the Force of Will and the 2 of the lands, so he didn't see the fetch land. From when he fought these before. So I think he's trying to get a free pass for the Deathrite Shaman if he would draw it. And then else just say go, because he knows that there's no pressure right now from Jarvis.
So would you have rather played the Tarmogoyf there?
No, I haven't played these matchups that much. As I said before, I mainly play mono white or lands. I think the Tarmogoyf is a 2/3, so it doesn't really do that much on the board. It's a 10 turn clock. So I think developing your hand and trying to get a good head start when Jarvis starts to do these broken things is probably better overall. And now he can deploy it and have the Force of Will up. And then next turn he can use Ponder if he draws a blue card, and then maybe Wasteland. But I don't think he wants to Wasteland here, actually. I think he just needs the resources.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, see, I'm in the... I would have probably cast the Tarmogoyf there, but that's just because I feel... Well, the logic that I have for casting the Tarmogoyf there is, one way that Jarvis gets back in this game is that he just draws the best cards off, straight off the top. And yes, we could spend turns sort of finding answers on Force of Will and Deathrite Shaman, or we could just kill him and not give him the opportunity to get that extra draw step. Given that we knew Jarvis's hand was Force of Will and a bunch of lands, I'm even more incentivized to cast the Tarmogoyf there, just because there's Jarvis would have to literally draw extremely well, Brainstorm into Petal, Entomb, Reanimator, something like that, something crazy like that. And so...
But the thing is, having a Tarmogoyf that's 2 power, it's correct that you kill your opponent, but it's within the next 10 turns. So being able to get the Deathrite Shaman and actually deploy it on the board, where he only has 1 unknown card and a Force of Will, I think it's better so it's only show and tell that you're afraid of. So actually drawing into like Brainstorm and then Entomb into Exhume will not be like a threat anymore because you have the Death Ride until he draws Pithing Needle, but then you also have Up Decay. So you really utilize your entire hand by not playing the Tarmogoyf, but trying to dig after like cards that are. But I definitely also see that you can play the Tarmogoyf and just try to beat him down before he actually draws cards. So you rely more on the deck. He also has Surgical Extraction, as we see here, which is also a card that you can dig for so that you only need to play around show and tell, which you can with your Force of Will.
Yeah, and this is something that I like that you're mentioning. Actually, this goes back to what you were saying earlier about how Brett really wants to just go full control in this matchup. And, if that's his game plan, then maybe it is better to play the Ponder in search of a better answer rather than deploy the Tarmogoyf.
So here we have the scenario I tried to put up. Now, he has Surgical to fight. Surgical is kind of the same as Death Ray Shaman. So Surgical fights the Graveyard. So now he only needs to fight through the show and tells. And Jarvis got to his show and tell, got to his 2 creatures. So he's probably just next turn he's gonna fire it off if he finds another counterspell here.
I'm pretty sure Jarvis can go off this turn, right?
Yeah. Let's see. There's something. Let me just. I have something that's. Yeah, clucking over the.
Yeah, actually, there was a. I might be incorrect about this. I could have sworn Jarvis had a Force of Will and some other cards, but.
Yeah, I think he put them away with. Did he brainstorm? I think he brainstormed and then he pondered. Okay. So it seems like he doesn't want to. He wants to draw a card that can actually deal with the Force of Will.
Ooh, wow! Was that ponder just off the top there? Because that's a extremely good draw for Brett.
So I think he's gonna fire this one off, get back his Force of Will. No. Oh, so he put the Force of Will up, and then he shuffled it away with Polluted Delta.
Yeah.
So see, he can actually almost hardcast his Griselbrand.
Griselbrand? Yeah, I know, right? I was just counting the mana there too. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, I mean that's a plan. That reminds me of a vintage game where LSV was playing against Matt Costa, and LSV uses an Ancestral Recall as bait to resolve a hardcast Griselbrand, and I was just like, that's great. I want to see this happen. That would be a great start for the Premier League.
Yeah. I can see there are people who are talking in the chat about whether or not Jarvis should just have gone with his show and tell. I think when your opponent is not playing anything, and you have that he boarded into this completely controlless plan with Surgical Extraction, Force of Will, Daces, and everything. I think it's kind of hard to just tap out for 3 mana to cast a Dace when you're tapped out. Because you can just wait 1 turn. The Tarmogoyf is still only killing you in the next 6 turns. Or not 6 turns, 4 turns, 4.5 turns. So I think you want to wait until the next turn to actually play around Dace. So I think it's correct not to just fire it off unless you think that you're actually losing within the next 2 turns. And that is definitely not how the board is looking right now.
Very interesting. Yeah, no, I agree. And one thing to note, Brett did cast Invasive Surgery on the show and tell, but because there's only 3 types in the graveyard right now.
Yeah.
What is it? Instant, sorcery, and land. So we're not able to snipe the rest of Jarvis's show and tells, but that would have been very cool if he could have gone through the whole deck and everything.
Especially with the Surgical Extraction in your hand, and you're really happy to just nuke all the cards that are actually threats at this stage of the game.
Right. All right, and I think this is going to be game here. Jarvis is priced into fetching to maybe draw a land when Brett presents the second Tarmogoyf, but that's lethal itself on board. Jarvis has to fetch because he knows the top card of his deck is a dud, and so in a last-ditch effort, he does not find what he needs. And I mean, even if he did find what he needed, there's a Force of Will just waiting. So going back to the sideboard.
Yeah, he was forced to concede.
I see what you did there. Very nice. So Jarvis is going to he's reevaluating now. I see he's taken the Lotus Petals out, and also notably the Careful Studies were not present game. Were they here in game 2? I didn't see any game 2. I guess he sideboarded them out. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. But this is very interesting. He's probably gonna sideboard. Well, why do you think he's doing that? Why do you think he's boarding out the Lotus Petals? And is he bringing anything in to replace them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, that's 15 cards. Okay, so he's just brought in the rest of his stuff. The other Abrupt Decays. He's slimmed out one Pithing Needle, or
it seems like he's playing a more combo focused plan right now, because Brett can't like do turn 1 Death Shaman. He can, but then he will be on the draw. So Jarvis has like 2 mana available. I don't know why he boarded out the Lotus Petals, but he must. Sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry. I think it's for Jarvis. What I may have noticed is that he had Lotus Petals on the draw to better play around soft magic, and then bringing the Dazes on the play to be a bit more aggressive and just like push your combo through.
Yeah, it seems like a place where he wants to be, so that he can play around these cards. It also seems really sweet when he can play like Polluted Delta into Ponder, and then just daze his opponent's Thoughtseize, Delvor, or Death Shaman. In the exact opposite order as I just mentioned them. He would like to kill the Death Shaman before anything else, I presume.
Yeah, no, for sure. And this is interesting. I mean, Jarvis is unfortunately on a mulligan, but with 2 Ponders and 2 Dazes, I don't know if he can afford to ship this back for something better.
And the nice thing here is he actually both got a Swamp and the ability to fetch an island.
Yep.
So that he plays around, but he didn't. Okay.
Very interesting that he is aggressively getting underground. See, I assume he is going to daze. His logic is probably, I will daze whatever spell gets played, and then deploy the Swamp on the next turn. The issue is if Brett decides to be very heads up and say turn 1 wasteland you.
But it is a good call here from Jarvis that Brett probably has so many 1-drops that he wouldn't like wasteland on turn 1, because it doesn't really suit his game plan as much as it suits Jarvis's game plan. So I think it's a very nice call from Jarvis here. Actually, it's risky, but it is a good call because Brett didn't play his wasteland.
Yeah, and this is pretty tragic. I think Brett just drew the best card that he could have drawn on the very first turn, which was Daze. But what's interesting is that he doesn't elect to Daze the Jarvis's Daze, holding it for a later turn
for Ponder but again, I think both players are kind of agreeing on what the matchup is about. So not playing the wasteland on turn 1 to kill it means that he needs to get resources. Not playing the Daze on his opponent's Daze for Thoughtseize means that they need to fight for resources again. So I really think that Brett understands where he wants to be in the matchup, and I think that Jarvis, as Brian did last game, he knows where Brett wants to be in the matchup as well. So it's kind of nice, this trying to meta your opponent's meta. It's interesting. It's nice to see good players really pick each other's brain.
Absolutely.
Pre-game and mid-game.
So here is very interesting. We see Brett have a copy of Sylvan Library in his hand.
Yeah.
I feel like he might deploy that as opposed to the Tarmogoyf. And he does. Right. Okay. Yeah. Very good. And so go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. This is the exact same situation as before, where you get a card that digs for further answers, or you can deploy a threat and try to end the game quickly. This time Jarvis has more unknown cards, so it's more risky to play the Tarmogoyf. But it is kind of like in a vacuum, it's the same. You really want to get your resources, try to kill Jarvis's plan in the long run, and not try to squeeze out the game.
Yeah. I think that's definitely, given that your only protection at the moment is Daze anyways, I don't think your chances of winning the game substantially improve if you deploy the Tarmogoyf and rely just on the Daze to protect yourself. I mean, there's sort of a limbo there where you may or may not die, but it's not like your hand at that exact moment can support any more protection than what you have, right? I mean, that's just like a simple, whatever tautology. So it makes sense to do that. And interestingly enough, Brett chooses not to pay life. If I was in Brett's shoes, I think I would have snap paid the 8 life, even if it's dead cards. I know there's polluted deltas that he might not necessarily want, but Well, it looks like Jarvis is going to fight over this Tarmogoyf. But I think it's just like getting ahead, paying those extra life to get the extra cards is paramount.
Yeah, the thing is, you get 1 turn less if your opponent like plays a Grizzlebrand. And you get 1 turn less if he plays a Tidespout Tyrant. But I also think that if the game comes to that, I think Brett would be like unfavored, and he's actually like drawing double cards here. So maybe he just didn't need the cards last turn, and he could draw the cards here this turn because it's actually live cards. Interesting though, he didn't daze the days before, because Jarvis is kind of stuck on lands. So I think Brett knows that he'll get like in a really good spot if he draws a Wasteland here.
Yeah.
And days can take away his show and tells. So I really enjoy watching Brett like maneuver through this game. He did some, in my opinion, unintuitive plays, but I can definitely see the reason behind. And if I would have been in his shoes, I would have done the exact same plays. So it's nice to see a person play 100% to his outs.
For sure, for sure. Chris Bakula mentions that Jarvis could have reanimated the Goyf to start beating in on his side, given that Brett's at 10 off the Sylvan Library. But who knows? Maybe that's just not enough. I mean, it looks like Jarvis is going to go ahead and do that now.
Yeah.
To at least block that Tarmogoyf. And still, it's interesting to see that Brett is holding on to these daisies. He's being very, very patient with them. And I definitely respect that. I think that's very good. I like that, you know, he's identifying this is in the board state that I have, there are very few cards that actually matter. I'm not going to waste my time dazing irrelevant spells. You know, just save him. Also, he had the Abrupt Decay too, I think, that we saw off the Brainstorm.
Yeah, and I think Jarvis is, I don't think there's a card, like he's going to try to fire off the show and tell here. And then we have the double days, so it's even too much. The first days will actually do the job quite well.
Right. So it looks like Jayne is going to take this match 2-1. Now he's comfortably at 2-0, which is very good, like a very good position to be in, given that he can, you know, clinch up that bye for the elimination rounds way down when.
And this is definitely not like an easy part. It's the world champion and platinum pro BBD, and it's gold pro Jarvis U.
Yeah, and honestly, I have to say, I think Legacy might be Jarvis's best formats. You know, 2 of his Legacy top 8s, 2 of his GP top 8s in Legacy.
Yeah.
So very impressive, Jayne. Well done, well done. On a different note, guys, we are now going to have our first raffle. So go ahead and